Well, how about that? It's time for an updated PvP guide for Resto Druid in Shadowlands. This guide is for patch 9.2, also known as Season 3, also known as the Potato Season. Depending on patience and weather conditions, we will go step by step through talents, PvP talents, legendaries, covenants, soulbinds, conduits, and of course stat priority. With that being said, this will be a basic PvP guide and I will try to keep it as short as possible. Now let's stop wasting time and dive into the first section, which is talents. Your default talent pick should look like this in most situations, and obviously there are variations. Depending on covenant, build and arena team composition, some talents are flexible while others are not. Cenarian Ward, Wild Charge, Soul of the Forest and Overgrowth are in my opinion the best talents in their respective tier and should never be changed. Guardian, Feral and Balance Affinity all have their place in different team compositions or in different druid builds. Balance Affinity is good in certain matchups if, for example, you're playing Night Fae aka Convoke Druid. Guardian Affinity is desired when you don't need extra stuns, mobility or damage, or when you're the main kill target, or when you won't have that much time to restealth. Feral Affinity is needed when the opposite of everything mentioned earlier is true. I'll give you a few examples. If you're playing with a rogue or facing double DPS teams, or when you're up against an assassination rogue, you are most likely going to need Guardian Affinity. If you're playing with a hunter, a warlock or a mage, you will need the extra stuns, and in some situations you won't even be the kill target. Enough about affinities. For level 35 tier, all three talents are viable options. Heart of the Wild is used in more aggressive builds like Night Fae or Kyrian when you want extra damage and pressure. Remember that in high dampening games, damage is king. Although rarely used, Heart of the Wild is excellent when paired with either Feral or Balance Affinity. Enjoy. Mass Entanglement usually fits perfectly with Deep Root's PvP talent, and this talent shines versus melee cleaves in 3s or in general classes with pets. Of course, this is not set in stone and it all depends on the situation. A good example is when facing Windwalker monks, as you can root his images and his potato tiger. To some extent, this talent is good versus Demonology and even Beast Mastery in some situations. Mighty Bash is obviously the standard pick when the other talents are not needed or you need the extra stun. Pretty straightforward. Last on the talent list is Flourish versus Germination. For centuries, Germination was the standard pick, especially before the Verdant Infusion nerf. Why? Because in some perfect scenarios you could maintain double Soul of the Forest rejuvenation for long periods of time. In today's modern potato meta, during some offensive cooldowns and due to the Verdant Infusion nerf, Flourish is almost mandatory. The main reason being your healing might not be enough in some situations. Second reason is you can extend your heal over time effects with both Swift Mend and Flourish, meaning you will have the opportunity to drink without shame. That's enough talk about talents. Let's jump into PvP talents. First, Keeper of the Grove. A PvP talent with a name so long it doesn't fit in the PvP talent window. With that out of the way, this talent is mandatory and you always need it as a deterrent to either insane incoming damage or crowd control avoidance. Learn to love it and abuse it. Thorns, Reactive Resin, Deep Roots are very solid PvP talents against melee specs. Thorns should always be picked versus most melee compositions, and then you should pick between Reactive Resin and Deep Roots depending on how much you can abuse Entangling Roots or Mass Entanglement, or how much your team needs roots. If you're playing with a Frost Mage or facing a Feral Druid, you're obviously not going to play Deep Roots. In other situations, Focused Growth might be better than Reactive Resin if you are able to keep a high buff uptime. Mark of the Wild is very good versus Destruction Warlocks, Balanced Druids, Mages and Elemental Shamans. Master Shapeshifter is situational. For damage purposes, it's solid with Feral or Balance Affinity in combination with Heart of the Wild. Last but not least, High Winds can be really good if you know you can reliably spam Cyclones. However, if you can't, this can backfire as it becomes a useless talent. As we jump into the legendary powers and covenant section, I want to point out that there are 3 viable covenants right now. Night Fae, Kyrian and Necrolord are all solid options, with Night Fae and Kyrian being more aggressive with high risk, high reward type of gameplay. However, due to the niche arena compositions and punishable gameplay, I will mostly focus on Necrolord. As mentioned earlier, this is a basic guide and I want to keep it short. For experienced players, I warmly recommend trying either Kyrian or Night Fae, but for those trying out Resto Druid for the first time or want to have an easier time pushing in this insane meta, I strongly recommend Necrolord. Main reason for this is Adaptive Swarm, which synergizes very well with pretty much everything. It contributes to your mastery as it is an extra heal over time effect. As a heal over time effect, its healing is not negligible. The buff itself buffs your other heal over time effects, and of course it can also be extended through either Swiftmend or Flourish. I know I've mentioned heal over time effects about 500 times, but as Resto Druid, that's your unique way of healing, and managing HOTS is important. Long story short is that Necrolord will drastically increase your healing output. Unity Legendary or Locust Swarm gives your Adaptive Swarm a chance to split, which makes it even better as you will be able to have Swarm on multiple targets at once. Now, the best legendary to bind all of this together is, to nobody's surprise, Verdant Infusion. Swiftmend no longer consumes a heal over time effect and extends duration of all HOTS on said target. This is hands down the best legendary, and to get the best of it, you want to time it in such a way that you always use it after Adaptive Swarm and, more importantly, Cenarian Ward. A somewhat bursty healing rotation should look like Adaptive Swarm into Cenarian Ward into Swiftmend into either Rejuvenation or Regrowth depending on the situation. This will extend both Adaptive Swarm and Cenarian Ward, and then you apply a Soul of the Forest Rejuvenation. If you need even more healing, you can either use Iron Bark or Flourish, or both. Other honorable mentions are Drought of Deep Focus and Circle of Life and Death. Of course, both options are for more aggressive gameplay and damage with high risk, high reward. Next we have Soulbinds and Conduits. Marileth is without a doubt the best Soulbind. Frictionless Coating, Ultimate Form, Viscous Trail, and the mighty Kevin that keeps you in combat for no reason are among the best Soulbind traits. For Conduit options, Evolved Swarm, Well-Honed Instincts, Floral Recycling, Tireless Pursuit, Ready for Anything, and Innate Resolve are the best of the best. For some extra survivability, you can swap Tireless Pursuit for Ursine Vigor, and that's that. For stat priority, get as much versatility as possible, including gems and enchants, then get 21% haste for 1.2 second global cooldown and extra ticks for your heal over time effects. Everything else should go into mastery. Yes, you should get both set bonuses. That's because set bonuses are just better than min-maxing a bunch of stats. Speaking of gems, try and get one straddling dual doublet in one of your sockets. You'll thank me later. With that being said, the guide is complete. I really hope I was able to cover most of the important issues in this short guide. If you have any questions or suggestions, please use the commentary section below and I will do my best to answer as soon as possible. If you want my druid macros or in general you need help with building macros, I suggest joining my Discord channel. Link is in the description. Thank you all for watching. Like, share and subscribe if you enjoyed the guide, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.